In this video we will learn how to match the 3D environment from 3D Studio Max properly into a background picture and how to optimize this finally in Photoshop. In 3D Studio Max we have this 3D objects consist of furnitures and a three-dimensional pattern wall, and we want to integrate it into this kind of picture. The first thing we do is we just go into our environment, go into exposure control, and under common parameters we have our environment, our background environment, and we want to take this picture into the background of our viewport. I just go into environment map, and if there's already a map, for example like mental wave physical sky, we just click on this and our material map browser will open. We double click on bitmap and we just choose our picture which we actually want to integrate into our background. Okay, I go into open, and here we go. Now it's in our background, and we have to do some other settings. What we have to do is we have to open our material editor. Here we go. We have it in our compact mode, by the way. I just choose one of our material object balls, and I just drag and drop my material on this field as an instance. And what I also have to do is I just have to change the mapping from spherical, that's really important, to screen actually. Okay, this already looks really good, but I still can't see it in my viewport. What I have to do, I have to set up my viewport that I'm able to see not this gradient anymore, but my picture. I just go into plus, go into configure viewports, and then next step into background. And here, instead of user interface gradient colors, I use environment background, and I just click on OK, and here we go. Okay, this already looks quite good. Two small things I would like to show you. If I go again into my material editor and instead of screen I just go into spherical environment, you can just see that it looks completely different. For our setting I definitely have to choose this screen. And what you also should do in perspective, you should go and say show save frame. That's also important, so you only really see the dimension of your picture, which actually also should fit to the setting of your output size. So the proportion of my output size 800 by 450 is exactly the proportion of our picture, of our background picture. It doesn't have to be the same picture resolution, but it has to be the same proportions. If I open this picture in Photoshop and go into pictures and the size of my pictures, I can see that it has a dimension of 1920 by 1280. And here in 3D Studio Max under output size custom, I also just enter 1920 by 1280, and I just fix my image aspect ratio, so I can change it easily to any other size, and it will still be fine. Nothing is changing in terms of proportions, so I'll just go back to 1920, and this is important, so at the end of the day I can integrate this in Photoshop, which is my final aim. Okay, for the function perspective match, we need to integrate a camera into our scene. And this camera has to be a free camera. It shouldn't be a target camera, but what you can do is you can just start with a target camera. That's a little bit easier, so I just put a target camera into my scene, and I just name it camera background. Okay, in my perspective view I just changed to camera background. By the way, here we go. So it already doesn't look bad, and of course you can try to adjust this camera that it really fits with your perspective, but there's a better way of doing this. And once the camera is more or less in the right direction, it's really important that you change the type from target camera to free camera, so it shouldn't have a target point anymore. So now we can work with perspective match, and I will show you how this works. Okay, I extend my camera background viewport, and then I just go into my command panel utilities, and I just select the camera perspective match. And here's something like show vanishing lines, and if I just click this on, you can see that there are two different kind of colors. It's the green one, it's the blue one, and it's the red one. And these are actually the colors of RGB. And the R stands for X dimension, and the G stands for Y dimension, and the B stands for the Z dimension. That's, by the way, also with your gizmo like this. So if you see the red line, you know this is the X dimension. If you see the G, it's the Y dimension. If you see the blue one, then it's the Z dimension. Okay, what you have to do is you have to select these, and you just have to fit this to your background picture, adjust it in space. It was already quite good, by the way, before. And when you adjust them into space, just do this right now and see that it really fits at different kind of points. You can just see what's happening if I just move them. Then you can see that my perspective is changing. You can already see what's happening. So this line I take, and I take also this one, and change this a little bit. Probably here, that's a really good position, somewhere like this. And once you did this and you find lines in your picture where you can adjust it properly, your 3D environment fits perfectly to your background picture. So if you want to adjust it a little bit further, then you just have to go into your perspective match, into the camera adjustments. Don't do anything anymore into your camera settings, and you can change your perspective in horizontal way. You can change it in the vertical way, and you can already see that it's always adjusting to the perspective. And you can change the distance, which I want to do actually right now. I just want to make it a little bit bigger and move it a little bit, so also up, somewhere like this, and I want to get it a little bit closer. And I think this already fits quite well. And if you now select one of these 3D objects and you move it in X and Y direction, you can just see that they really move in your space, and that perspective always fits. And if I just go into my top view again, and you can just observe a little bit your camera background, and then you can just see how well this works. Everything is in perspective, whatever you do, and it fits to your camera background. And you can also see what I was talking about beforehand, like that the red color is the X direction, the green color is the Y direction, and actually then the that X is the blue color actually. So with this setting, we just make our first visualization, and what you can see, its feed's a little bit too big. You can't see it in your video so well, and what I can just do, I can zoom out with my mouse, and now it's proportional 1 to 2, and that's already much better. And we don't want to do much in 3D Studio, because at the end of the day we want to finalize this in Photoshop. I think sometimes it's much faster. So the only thing we are working on is our exposure control and a little bit with our light, which we do right now. The first thing, when we see our background picture, that's a room with not really direct light, and you can see that our 3D wall has a lot of direct light, and I want to have it more like a diffuse light. So what I do is I just select my daylight system. Do it now. We just go into modify, and in modifier under metal scale haze driven, I can just change the haze, for example, to 10, and then I have a quite bright broadcast and not so much direct light anymore. And here you can already see in the visualization that it looks quite different, and there are less strong shadows on my wall anymore than with an hazen of 0. And I'm fine with the setting, and the only thing I just want to adjust a little bit my exposure control. So we go into render environment and exposure control, and I choose my render preview. And I just make it slightly darker, for example, like 11. I can also think about if I just change the white point to 6500 Kelvin, just see what's happening with this. If it's probably a little bit too yellowish, but there I can already see what fits better to my picture actually. And of course, I can also work on my on the direction of my light with my north direction, and all these things is definitely something I can work with. Anyhow, I'm fine with this. I just make my final visualization right now. Okay, here we go, and with this result, I'm already quite happy. Okay, if I save this picture as a JPEG, or for example like an HDR file, then you just have baked the background picture together with my 3D visualization, which I actually want to do in Photoshop. So what you do is you just save it as a PNG file, and as a PNG I just say this is my 3D environment environment. Okay, you just save it. And it's really important that at the end of the day you also say you want to save it as a picture with an alpha channel, and that's fine. And if you open this in Photoshop, you can see what's happening, that you only saved your 3D environment and not the background picture. Okay, now we are already in Photoshop. I have opened my background picture, and here's a small preview of my new PNG 3D Studio environment. I just opened this in Photoshop. You can see that there's a lot of transparency, and I just can say string A, string copy, and I go to my background picture and just say string V, and I integrate it into my picture. There's one thing I'm not really happy with, the position actually where I integrated my picture, so I just go one step back, and there's another way of integrating it. I can just integrate it at the original position, which definitely looks much better. This is actually what I want to do, so I don't have to do it in an analog way. And now I have two layers, my background picture and my 3D environment layer, and with both layers I can do a lot. First of all, with my 3D environment layer, I can always change my color correction. If I just go into correction and I just say tone weight corrector, you can see that I can adjust it a little bit. This is the first thing I can do, and there are also nice features like this Abwedeln. I'll just show you what it does actually. And for this, extend a little bit the radius of my pencil, so somewhere like this, and you can see that I can make it slightly brighter. And I can also do the opposite. I just go into Nachbelichter, and also here I extend the size of my pencil, and you can see that it can make it slightly darker. Over here it fits quite well, and here's also a little bit too bright, and you can see that I can also change a little bit my settings, and here's also a little bit too bright. And there are a lot of other things I can do. I can at certain regions also here extend a little bit my pencil size. I can make it a little bit less intense in terms of color, so a lot of options I can do. I can also work with the color of my layer. For example, if I go into Farbton Sättigung, then you can see that I can change this a little bit, It definitely makes sense if there's a little bit of more red inside, somewhere like this, because this is at the end of the day also the reflections of my floor, and I can take a little bit of this saturation out of it and see that you can change it completely. Probably I should add a little bit and change the brightness, and this already looks quite good. And many other things you can actually do. You can, for example, go here and just say you want to have a little bit more have it out of focus, and I also take a bigger pencil size, somewhere like this, and I just want to blur it here a little bit. You can actually do, and also here, so it's slightly out of focus, a little bit like our picture. And you can already see that you can spend a lot of time in terms of doing things like this. There's some things which don't work with my background environment, because obviously my chair should be in front of my pattern, so I just choose my background, double click on it, and can move it to the front, and I just see that I select my chairs. I just go into my lasso function, magnet lasso, and then I just zoom in and go into my chairs, and I just follow my chairs, somewhere like this. Sometimes I click to get the positions a little bit better, and I do it really roughly. I don't want to spend too much time on this, especially not in this video, so I just do it really fast. A lot of mistakes, that doesn't matter. And somehow like this. Okay, really rough. And just close it with a double click. And if you want to add something, you just press your Umschaltkey, I don't know the English word right now, and your Alt key to subtract something. You can change between these kind of settings, and I just copy this. Copy, and I just place it again at the same position, like einfügen Spezial at original position. And now I just take my basic background again, drop it underneath my 3D environment, and you can already see that it worked a little bit better, that you can change these layers, and that there is this layer in front of this. And if you don't go too close, then it already fits quite well, apart from that there's an intersection between the 3D model and your chairs. The last thing what's missing is probably a little bit of shadows under my objects, and probably with this 3D wall I just do it really roughly. I just take the layer of my 3D wall and my 3D object, I just drag and drop it on my copy field here in Photoshop. Just made a copy out of this, and I just name this shadow. Okay, I take this layer and I just go into transforming and mirror it in a vertical way. Looks really weird to you, but doesn't matter. I just switch all of my my layers off, and I just differentiate between my objects and my my 3D wall, and I do it really roughly. Just copy my 3D objects somewhere like this, and say string X, and I just have a new layer and call these objects, and here I go again into position, the original position. Okay, I switch this off, and I switch on my layer again and my basic background, and the first one was my wall shadow. Wall shadow. And what I do right now here is I just go into my gradient, and I just darken it a little bit, for example like this, and I also take a little bit out the color of the whole thing. I think it's slightly too much, somewhere like this. And the next thing is I just want to use a filter. It's my Gaussian Weichzeichner, and I just make it quite much, a little bit like this, and I just go into transformation, and I distort it so it really fits underneath, somehow like this. And okay, also not perfect, but that's fine. And the next thing I want to have, just want to fade it out quite a lot. And what I have to do is I just from your bucket, you just go into the gradient tool, and there's something that you can switch and use a mask. I just use the mask, and if I use the mask, you can see that here under your tools you can choose from Vordergrund to Transparenz. In the mask mode, it means that I can use it with a picture. And here we go. It just looks a little bit weird to you because it's now red and whitish. And if you leave your mask, then at the end of the day, what you did is you just did a selection. And here, this one you can delete. You delete the lower part, delete. And what happened is that you have somehow something like this, which doesn't look such great, but I think it's a starting point. And if you just change the transparency of the layer a little bit like this, then it's already much better. And next step, I just pull my 3D wall on top. And I think that's already quite something. It doesn't look too bad with such a quick effect. Okay, let's do the same thing with our objects. I call this layer object shadows, and these ones are just moved down a little bit, and I just mirror this, and I can also just probably transform this. I just go into transformation and just move it down like this, and let me see, that's somehow like this. I'm absolutely fine with this, and I confirm. Next thing again, I just make it slightly darker, and go into tone bed corrector. I darken it a little bit, and yeah, then just go into filter and blurred, somehow like this. And I have a really good example here. I can already see what happened with my desk over there, so that's a really good good example. The next thing I go again into my gradient. I just switch on my mask, and when I switched on my mask and my gradient, I can just produce a small gradient like this. I just have to leave my mask right now, and I delete my selection, and with this one, string D, just deselect everything. I can just move my parts, and of course they are not always in the right position, so this one I just move down a little bit, somewhere like this. Like I said, I do it really roughly, so it's not so important to me. It really can take a long time. I move this under my layer with all my other objects, and if I change the transparency of this layer a little bit, then you can already see that the result is not really bad. And for example, this one is probably a little bit too bright, but I think it's a good starting point, and it already looks quite realistic. Probably slightly too much also in this area. So here I just increase my transparency with my wall, somewhere like this. You see somewhere like this. So I think this is already a quite good result. Thanks for watching. With this method you still have full control of all the levels. For example, you can select the basic background level and layer, and you can just go into tone corrector and just do adjustments here. You can make it brighter or less bright. Anyhow, save this thing as a PSD, and if you want to use it for presentations, just save it as a JPEG, and I think you are absolutely fine with this result. Thanks for watching.